forgotten side of the German soldier. I'm sure there are others better able to cover the nuances of German military equipment or tactics when it comes to lesser-known facts, but I'd like to take a slightly different approach and look at the German soldier himself. At the start of the war, there was no shortage of volunteers. Anyone over 18 could join. Many signed up out of anger over the Treaty of Versailles or for nationalistic reasons, eager to fight for the fatherland. Some were drawn by adventure and the promise of glory. For others, encouragement came from family members who saw military service as honourable. However, not all volunteered. Hitler had also instituted a mandatory draft, and a significant portion of the Wehrmacht was composed of draftees. For many, this was simply duty to their country, a time of service to get through and then return to civilian life. Getting out of military duty was almost impossible. Conscientious objection or claims of pacifism could land you in a concentration camp. There were few exemptions, and even medical cases were rarely granted. This means that, much like other militaries, a sizable number of German soldiers didn't want to be there. As the war dragged on, conditions worsened. The draft age was lowered repeatedly, while the maximum age increased. Medical standards for recruitment slipped as well. Hearing or eyesight issues were often ignored. If you could fire a weapon, man a station, or do manual labour, you were drafted. Training went from a few weeks to mere days as the war took its toll. One lesser-known fact about the German military is how morale deteriorated as the war dragged on. Refusing to serve or surrendering voluntarily could mean a death sentence from your own side. Deserters were often executed on the spot, or hung from light posts with a sign listing their crime. By the end, only the Hitler Youth and the remaining SS units showed much enthusiasm. Ironically, the last unit to surrender was an SS unit of French volunteers. Another challenge was food. At first, German military rations were considered excellent compared to other armies. But over time, the quality and quantity dwindled, forcing soldiers to eat whatever they could find, sometimes even horse meat or rats. Water, initially abundant thanks to mobile water wagons, became scarce as convoys and railways were attacked. The German military often went hungry, dirty and thirsty. Replacement clothing, boots and gear became rare. Soldiers scavenged from the dead, and spare parts were cannibalized from abandoned vehicles. Fuel shortages forced many to abandon their vehicles, making them more vulnerable to both the weather and the enemy. Imagine how this affected morale. Injuries could also be worse than death. Medical care, once exceptional, declined dramatically. Medicine was rationed, equipment was scarce, and hot water for sanitation was nearly impossible to find. A wounded soldier faced not only pain, but the risk of infection and inadequate treatment. Psychologically, German soldiers were constantly exhausted, moving from battle to battle, often to protect their own homes, towns, or the homes of friends and family. This relentless pressure, coupled with fears about the approaching Russian army, took a mental toll. Russian forces were portrayed as merciless, which frightened German soldiers, many of them just boys as young as 12 or elderly men, exhausted, ill-fed and poorly equipped. The German Wehrmacht was raised on ideas of Germanic invincibility and racial superiority. Yet only 12 years after Hitler's rise, they faced the prospect of defeat by the very people they deemed inferior. For many, this disillusionment was traumatic. This lesser-known side of the German military reveals a journey from pride to disillusionment, illustrating the cost of fanaticism and ambition in stark human terms.